everyone, welcome to another GVG discussion. I'm your host, Brandon. Today we're talking about Donkey Kong Bonanza, which recently came out for Nintendo Switch 2. I'm joined by Steve Bowling and Daniel Alba, and we're going to get bananas over bananas. So for the record, I've finished the game, Steve has finished the game, Daniel is working his way through it, but this is going to be a spoiler-free discussion. We're just going to give our overall impressions of Donkey Kong Bonanza. And Daniel, I'm going to throw it to you first. What do you think about the donk? But before we get started, a word from our sponsor.
This video is sponsored by Raycon. Don't you just love it when one of your favorites comes back even better, like all of those Switch 2 edition games we've been reviewing here on the channel? Well, this July, guess who's back and better than ever? Raycon's fan favorite Everyday Earbuds Classic model, now packing active noise cancellation. The new Everyday Earbuds are my favorite pair of earbuds to use with my shiny new Switch, and with an amazing 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery, they're ready to get me through even the biggest games we're covering. Awareness mode means I can also hear what's going on around me while being totally immersed in my games. And for those times that I can't afford to split my focus, I can use the active noise cancellation to tune out the noise around me. Raycon's Everyday Earbuds Classic feature audio quality that rivals all the big audio brands you know and love at half the price. So make sure to get yours and support GVG in the process. Go to buyraycon.com/GVG to get 20% off and free shipping on the new Everyday Earbuds Classic. Thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring this video, and let's get right back into it.
I think the donk, he came in swinging and he hit a home run here. I love this game. Donkey Kong Bonanza is... It's like not a sequel or successor to Mario Odyssey. It's entirely its own thing. We all know that the same team worked on this game as they did on Mario Odyssey, but they've done enough with this to give it its own identity. And I think what they've done with this is really amazing. Like, for the most part, like, this game, I feel like I've never run out of things to do. There's always something new to hit or punch or discover or dig up a map or something and find just everything in this map. I know some of us, we were trying to level as much as this map as we possibly could, but there's just so much of it per layer. And yeah, I found so much just joy in this. There's so much fun to be had in a game where you just want to punch everything and destroy absolutely everything in sight.
Steve, what do you think?
I'm a pretty darn big fan of this game, considering I would not have thrown myself in as like a DK fan before Bonanza came out. So I'm a bit surprised at how into this game I am. I don't think I agree necessarily with some of the online sentiment that I've seen that it's like the best platformer ever, or that, you know, it even tops Mario Odyssey, which I think is because of the team involved in this, it's going to invite some comparisons that both fair and unfair, in my opinion. But I do think that when we talk about this game, especially as it compares to Odyssey, for me, I'm talking about literally like that 0.1 of a difference between a 9.9 and a 10. I think they're both amazing games, but I do think DK is the 9.9 to Odyssey's 10.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I'm in a bit of a unique position where I literally just replayed Super Mario Odyssey, you know, in the third or fourth week after the Switch 2 came out. Mainly because I wanted to be able to compare it as closely as possible to Donkey Kong Bonanza with a fresh mind. And I don't know what you guys think about this specific thing, but Super Mario Odyssey, to me, is a great game top to bottom, but I think one of its biggest weaknesses is its main scenario. Like, when you get to a level, you know, you're presented with a triple moon and an objective, and Donkey Kong Bonanza does something very similar to that. But I think Donkey Kong Bonanza's individual main scenario objectives are way more interesting than Odyssey ever gets. Maybe aside from, like, the New Donk City one.
Yeah, I think this game tells an overarching story a bit more cohesively than it does with Mario Odyssey. Like, there's the whole Odyssey story of like, oh, Bowser kidnapped Peach, he's trying to collect all these different things he needs for the wedding. That was a fun connective tissue between every world. But I think here with Bonanza, you have like the moment to moment situations, like you are in a situation in where you see where your objective is and you do have to go there, but there's just so much of a sandboxy feeling when you go from place to place. Like I never felt rushed, or I never felt like I was getting bored going from place to place. Like there was always something to do in between, and there's just that right amount of story and mystery behind like what's really going on here, what's at the very bottom at the planet's core in between, to keep me going along throughout the entire way.
I think DK also has like an interesting way of like individual level progression, because as you do those like main scenario objectives, there's usually a boss fight. This game is swimming in boss fights, way more than Mario Odyssey ever had. And once you beat one, you go down to another sub-layer, and now suddenly there's a bunch more bananas available to you. There's new elements to a level that you're already in, so it expands like the gameplay possibilities of the existing level design. And the further you get into the game, the more often sub-layers will go further. One of my favorite levels in the game is the forest layer with the eggshell hotel. And that has, I think, 2 or maybe 3 extra sub-layers. It just kept going. And I really enjoyed my experience of digging down further, having the level gradually open up, and give me access to more and more bananas as I went down. Like, I never felt like I had to collect a bunch of bananas. In fact, you don't have to collect a single banana, apparently. You are never asked to even once in the main playthrough of the game. But I just like the way it builds on itself. When it comes to Odyssey, in most levels, the entire level's available to you from the start. But this adds a sense of linear progression that I think Odyssey misses out on.
See, now for me, I think where I differ in my opinion here is that I kind of like the non-linearity of games like Odyssey, where, I still am old enough to remember playing Mario 64 for the first time and realizing that I could get a star that wasn't the one I chose at the beginning of the level, and having that just be kind of a cool moment. And that's something that sticks with me even now throughout like my gaming experiences. If I know what the objective is, but I see a sub-objective, then I instinctively want to go for that thing. And interestingly, I think Donkey Kong also excels in that regard, because I can't tell you how many times I'd have a banana literally in my line of sight, and I'd do a ground slap, a hand slap, and see the sonar ping for something different and be like, well, I guess I'm doing that now. It's a very easy game to get sucked into and get distracted. One thing that I think that that Bananza does far better than Odyssey is that, as you kind of alluded to, Brandon, is the connective tissue, in some cases, quite literally speaking, between the sublayers, right? Like each layer is what I'd consider to be like a world in a more traditional 3D platformer, whereas sublayers are like stages, but the fact that you can travel freely between them, and I didn't realize this during my earlier, portion of my playthrough, but what you do to the environments stays between sublayers. Like I fell into one and thought I'd lose all my progress, and then shot back up and realized like, oh no, everything I destroyed is still destroyed. And that was like almost a light bulb moment for me, that I was like, wow, this is something that just couldn't have been pulled off back in 2017 or on the Switch 1 period. I know they showed Bananza on the Switch 1 in like a developer interview, but I really doubt it would have saved your progression to that scale.
It even saves your progression, like when you go into a bonus level. Like you go into a bonus level, do a little challenge and pop out, and all your destruction's still there. Like, I think even more so than going in between sublayers, or that's where it was like, wow, for me. The fact that it saved all of that stage information when you load out of it is really cool. And, I think for me personally, like, the bananas kind of being as numerous as the moons were in Odyssey, I think it hits a little bit better for me here. Because in the same way that Odyssey would just have moons just kind of out in the open, DK does too. But I feel like DK usually has more like distinct objectives or challenges tied to getting to those bananas than Odyssey does. And that's not to disparage Odyssey in any way. I think these are two slightly different approaches to the same thing, but I think I generally prefer how it's done in Bananza more.
Yeah, you have some of the bananas that are just kind of sitting out in the open. Sometimes I'll do the sonar and you just see a random one out of nowhere. Like, oh, there's a grotto here. I could just dig down and get this banana. I don't know. I was always against the argument that people thought that, oh, there's just random moons everywhere that they just throw out for you to collect. But everything is named. Everything has a little title. Whenever you grab a banana, whenever you grab a moon, there's a little title on it. So it's not completely random. There was some intention of putting all these in every place that you see just to help and encourage you to explore this entire world for what it is. And man, exploring these worlds as Donkey Kong is very satisfying, whether you're just running around punching things, whether you're spamming the roll and the punch to just barrel through a tunnel just forcefully to make a path open up. That's just the most satisfying thing ever. And yeah, traversal with Donkey Kong is amazing. The fact that he has less of a moveset than Mario, and yet still feels like you can do so much more. I think that's a strength to it, rather than, you know, a weakness of like, oh, DK can only punch in 3 directions, roll, jump, and so on. But I think that kind of lends a strength to it, especially with the way that these worlds are designed.
Yeah, there were a lot of moments where like there was a banana on a distant platform that DK's not going to make just by jumping. You know, in Odyssey, you would jump, throw Cappy, dive onto Cappy, bounce off, throw Cappy again, dive again, and you know, you would do some crazy stuff. This is more limited in scope, but I think I appreciate that more. Like, it's still expressive enough while not making DK like the most broken acrobat you've ever seen. Like, you can roll jump, which makes you go out a little bit farther. You can roll again after that, and then punch after that, and that gives you an extra little bit of height. And chaining some of these moves together is really satisfying.
I think for me, the big thing is that DK feels a lot faster than Mario did in Odyssey. Like, especially with that roll jump, that initial burst of speed feels really huge and very satisfying. I've only recently started trying to chain those moves together a bit better, which is in a weird way similar to what I did with Odyssey. All those moves you mentioned, like the long jump into the Cappy throw, into the bounce, into the second throw, into the dive, that's stuff that I didn't start doing until the post game in Odyssey, because I didn't feel like I really needed it until I was really hunting down all, you know, the rest of the moons in that game. Whereas, you know, and it's a similar kind of progression for me, you know, as we mentioned at the top of the discussion, I've already finished the game, you've finished the game, and now I'm just kind of in the process of trying to 100% it, of, you know, getting the rest of the stuff. And that's when I'm really finding the bananas that I missed, because I wasn't doing those more advanced, you know, acrobatic movement techniques. And one thing I'll say that I really enjoy about this game is it feels like it has a bit more of the philosophy that Nintendo took with games like Breath of the Wild in it than Mario did, where they try to make exploration very rewarding.
Yeah, I love that every banana is working towards making DK stronger. Like, you know, every 5 bananas you get a skill point, and the skill tree, while not super diverse, is very long. There are a lot of skills in Donkey Kong Bonanza, and it will take a while to get them all. Yeah, it makes collecting bananas more rewarding on a single banana basis than Odyssey was, like on a single moon basis. Because in Odyssey, like when you're going from level to level, like you have the main scenario moons that you do, and then after that, there would be a set number of moons you need to get in order to go to the next level. But with DK, like I said earlier, you can beat the entire game without ever collecting a single banana. The game never forces you to do that. You can just skip them all, make DK as weak as possible, and get all the way to the end of the game, which I love. I tuned my experience quite a bit by refusing to upgrade my health at all, which made some of the game pretty hard. But it made me want to discover bananas so I could unlock skills. And that is something that I think this game does right really, really well. Oh, did you have something, Steve?
I was going to say that one thing that I like that you mentioned, that DK, you know, through your own choices was difficult at points. And I do think that DK is significantly more difficult than Odyssey. And I don't think that's really a high bar. Like, I think Odyssey, until you get to the post game, is a really easy game. And I think parts of DK are pretty easy. You know, which not at all surprising. What I did find surprising is that parts of DK are actually pretty dang hard, though.
There's a nice range in the difficulty that I don't think Odyssey has.
Yeah, I think that, you know, during some encounters, you can take like 3 hearts worth of damage. And if you don't, from a single hit, to be clear, if you don't upgrade your hearts, that's like, you might die. Be in for 2 hits and you're done, or even dead. Just 1 and done. And so I know that I took a similar path, and there were some fights in the game where I legit got a little frustrated, and I was like, how is this happening? This is way more difficult than I anticipated. On the other hand, some boss fights were maybe a little too easy, like a little too simple. Like even my 8-year-old is like, wow, that's already over. I can't believe I finished that already.
Yeah, I noticed like really early on, and other people's first impressions too were like, these first bosses are very fragile. Like you could just do the Kong Bonanza and just wail on the first few bosses and you're done. But I've discovered later on, because I'm a bit further down right now, bosses get a bit trickier. Like at that point, you have to also implement some platforming, which I found out is kind of hard when DK is so destructive. You have to kind of actually be careful with your platforming as you try to like reach an enemy, for example, because if you try to roll, if you try to jump or try to grab something, you're kind of breaking some of the terrain below you, for example, and then you start to fall. So it's not just about, you know, powering your way through. At some point, you are going to have to use a bit more finesse to reach these bosses, to attack them, to throw something at them, for example. And I appreciate that kind of gradual incline of difficulty as you progress forward.
The game even starts like playing with how different types of terrain interact with each other. Which plays into some of the boss fights as well, and that's when I realized just how far they had taken this destruction mechanic. Like on the surface, it just looks like your big monkey punch thing, funny, haha. But there's a lot of thought put into this, even into the post game. I won't go into details, but like the game was still throwing new things at me with this system that hasn't changed since the game started, and that's really impressive.
Yeah, one thing that I'll say, plug your ears if you don't want the mildest spoiler of all time, but in the Zebra Bonanza, it took me until the post game, and this is something that you could have done at any point. I didn't know that the zebra could run on water. Like, I just assumed that wouldn't work, and when I found that out, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I had been using turf surf to get around water, not knowing I had a Bonanza in my arsenal for most of the game that could just let me run across it like the Flash.
I'm a big fan of the Bonanza transformations, especially when you have multiple and you can start like switching between them in a single Bonanza like run. Like I love using, you know, Zebra running really fast, then jumping and then switching to Ostrich to get some distance in the air. Like that's surprisingly like, I don't know, like power fantasy for me. It was hitting a part of my brain that I really liked.
It's also funny how in some cases, Bonanza kind of makes things a bit trivial. In some cases, there was a specific challenge where I kind of just climbed a height at the beginning. I turned into Ostrich and I just flew to the end. To the end points, and I could just kind of see where all the other extra bananas are as well. So I kind of just flew there. I missed the entire points of that because of the starting line, but it was just funny and fun that you can in fact like break some parts, like sequence break some certain things in that case with Bonanza.
It kind of calls back to what I mentioned earlier about being able to like tune the experience to yourself based on what skills you pour points into. Because, you know, some of the skills you can upgrade are like the flight distance for Ostrich. And maybe if in its base state, it wouldn't have been enough. I think no banana runs for Donkey Kong Bonanza are going to be really fun. Because it's going to test your ability a lot when you don't have access to the full arsenal of what these abilities can do.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what speedrunners and people who are just more inclined to, you know, kind of suffer through greater challenges are going to do with this game, because like you mentioned, I didn't think about it till I think it was either you or John told me that there were, that you didn't have to pick up a banana. And because you're right, every time you finish like a level, the banana goes down to the next sublayer. And I actually found as I was exploring the post game that I had missed one. Like at some point I had beaten a layer or a sublayer and the 3 banana bunch went down there and I ignored it and kept going. And I didn't realize that till I was just kind of mopping up bananas in an area that I hadn't finished, and just realized I had left 3 of them just sitting there. So it'll be really interesting to see what people do, because like we both kind of mentioned, it gets difficult. Like it gets pretty dang hard. And, I admittedly towards the end of the game was kind of rushing my way through. So I wasn't playing as cleanly as I might if I was taking my time. But I mean, I still can't imagine a world in which I would have wanted to have no skill points going into those final moments.
There were a couple points towards the end where I had to upgrade my hearts because I was like, I can't do this.
You mentioned earlier how you forgot to pick up some bananas after falling down to the next sublayer. I always forget. Every time I dive through, I'm like, oh, banana. Like when I land, like, I always forget that there's more bananas to collect as I land.
This is a little treat.
Yeah, little banana potassium jump scare every single time, but a happy one.
This, we haven't talked at all about Pauline, but I think this is the most heartwarming and enjoyable duo I have ever experienced in a platformer like this. Sorry, Banjo-Kazooie.
Whoops. I love Pauline. She's such a fun addition to this, and I don't know how I would have felt about this game looking back if it was just this odd rock on your back this entire way. The fact that it is a younger Pauline, it adds so much to the experience, and there's no short amount of voice acting. She speaks a lot, whether it's just hanging on your back, or whenever I go to a getaway, I have to take a snooze there and see what Pauline says to me while I'm trying to sleep, because they're really quirky and fun sometimes.
Yeah, I have really complicated feelings about Pauline. To be clear, I love Pauline as a character in this game. I think they did a great job with her specifically, but I think it also highlights this weird reticence on Nintendo's part to make their bigger characters talk. You have Pauline giving fully voiced dialogue all throughout the game, wonderfully acted, wonderfully delivered, very endearing and charming. And then you have, for some reason, all the Kong characters speaking like a Kong language, except for DK. He never says anything, but there are moments of implied speech where Pauline understands what DK is saying and responds to it. And for me, it just seems very disjointed. In a world in which, DK is arguably getting this spotlight because of his presence in the Mario movie where he spoke. And then we have kind of this, separate rendition of DK where he doesn't speak, and then the Kongs kind of have it feels like they get eerily close to having that almost cinematic feel to the game that is kind of what Sony's known for these days. And then they just stop ever so slightly short of it. When Pauline is talking, I feel like I'm watching a Pixar film. And then when the Kongs start talking, I'm reminded that I'm in a video game.
It's I like the fact that the other Kongs don't speak English. I do think it's weird that Pauline can just understand them, and she makes note of that, and that's never addressed again. That's just Nintendo being cheeky, and I'm fine with that. But yeah, I guess it is a little weird that DK doesn't really say anything. He just emotes. He emotes wonderfully, by the way. Whenever he smiles or he's angry, it's super funny because his expressions are just completely outlandish. But yeah, I guess it is a little weird that the other Kongs can talk, but he doesn't.
It's just main character thing
syndrome
with Link, with Mario. It's just a thing that they do. I just kind of accept it at this point that our main character for certain games are just not going to speak. And it's even funnier too, considering this is the same voice actor for DK as in the Mario Brothers movie, the Japanese version. Same guy doing the voices, but now he just doesn't talk. He just grunts and does all this. But he does some really great expressive exertions too. When he's different animals and Bonanzas, he will change his voice as well to kind of fit that in. They're done very well. You can hear them over all the destruction happening.
And that says nothing of the Pauline singing in gibberish, which I thought was an inspired choice because the songs that she's singing are from these different races of animals she's meeting. So of course the songs aren't in English, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I love the music that accompanies all of the Bananza transformations. I think that, Pauline is a highlight of this whole game for me. I think that, they did her extremely well. They did her justice. It raises more questions than it answers. Like who the heck is she? What timeline are we in? All that stuff. Derek did that great video on that you did a heck of a job editing, Brandon. But it is it almost to me highlights, like I said this to you, I think, Brandon, after I finished the game, but it makes me wonder how a DK game without her would go. Because I think if you took her out of the equation and you imagined Bananza somehow existing without her, or maybe she remained as Odd Rock, I think that you would lose a lot of what makes this game great.
I think I agree that we needed, like, Pauline is basically, our avatar in this game. Like, she is what connects us to Donkey Kong. Because when Donkey Kong doesn't speak, we don't have any idea how he feels about what's going on. But there is an emotional through line there, and we get to... I personally found that I love Donkey Kong now. Like, as a character, I look at his big, doofy smile, and I'm like, that's my guy. And I wouldn't feel that if Pauline wasn't there to give him, like, something to attach to that isn't just bananas.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah, these two characters help to elevate each other, and I don't think we would have had that if it was just one or the other. And yeah, I think they make a fantastic duo here. I consistently made this comparison. It is somewhat off topic, but it's so cool that the very final sequence of Super Mario Odyssey is the basis for this entire game, in which you're trying to escape somewhere, breaking through everything with this girl on your back. And that's just Donkey Kong Bonanza. They took that idea. I don't know if it was the basis for it, if that was where the whole concept came from, but they've made entire game and relationship between these two characters so profound and so, like, heartwarming to watch all the way through, from the very beginning where Pauline is kind of nervous and shy to where they're both dancing with each other after you beat a major boss and move to the next sub-layer.
That's a great observation, and they tie it together even more. You said Breaking Through, which is not the name of the song, but it is a lyric in the song. But the end song, when you're escaping the moon at the end of Odyssey, is called Breaking Free. And it's also sung by Pauline. So that's a great, like unification of these two games. And yeah, I would not be surprised if that ending sequence inspired what Donkey Kong Bonanza became.
It's funny because I imagine that you're both correct, like that is exactly what it was. But their public excuse is that they just slapped hands on a Goomba and we're like, we're going to make a game about this.
The fact that that's the actual...
Maybe they slapped hands on a Goomba before they finished Odyssey. Who knows?
That's true. Maybe they did, and they're like, we could use this in the final sequence. But it's... I do want to say, though, for as positive as we are, I do think there are some ways in which Bonanza, and by large, it's almost a discussion of Nintendo games as a whole, kind of fall down. There's just some stuff in here. The one thing that I think irks me in particular, because it's been an issue since at least 2020, is the Banandium chip exchange. Let me exchange for more than one banana at a time. I'm begging you, Nintendo.
Yeah, I don't really know why they took that route. Like, on each layer, you only have to trade for one banana to get credit for that one on the checklist. But you can keep getting more, just like you can buy moons in Odyssey endlessly. But yeah, if you're trying to grind for skill points, I could see that being a problem. I never once in my playthrough tried to buy more than one at a time. So I personally didn't encounter that, but I could see why they'd be frustrating. That's just the Animal Crossing fishing bait problem.
Yeah, my issue with this was that, at a certain point, I realized I needed to get, like you said, about like 10 skill points. And through my playthrough, for whatever reason, I never used the chip exchange. So I had like 2,000 Banandium chips just sitting there. And I decided I was just going to trade them all in. I was there for like 10 minutes just mashing the A button, being like, yes, in fact, I would like another one. You have to buy it, and then the banana has to spawn over DK's head, and then he has to shatter and eat said banana automatically. So you're not doing anything. and I'm like, you could even be like, hey, do you want to buy 5 for 500? At least there are bunches of 5 in the game. Like, just let me not have to, minimize the amount of time I'm sitting here. And Nintendo loves to do this with certain menu design in games where it's just like, we imagine people will interact with it this way, so we're going to provide 0 other options.
I think, I can't remember if they say this or not, but I don't recall it happening. Having the skill tree tied to up on the D-pad.
I don't think that that's messaged anywhere in the game because,
Same with photo mode.
This came up in our Discord when we were all playing the game, and I was like, there's no way to do this. And even John, who is working on our review for the game right now, couldn't remember if he knew of a way to do it. And, everyone in my house, literally everyone's playing this game. None of us knew of a way to do it, but you knew. And I was flabbergasted when I found out it existed, because I was writing this tweet like a complaint about how you can't see how many bananas you've eaten versus how many you've gotten. It's just such a weird thing to not make that more prominent. I even, after you told me and I verified it worked, I even went through the settings and like looked at the controls. It's not even in the options menu that it tells you that that's available. I imagine it might be like on a load screen or something, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, they could have done a better job messaging that. Like, even a little D-pad icon in the bottom left corner with an up that says skill tree and a down that says photo mode probably could have gone a long way.
Yeah, even if it only appeared when you paused the game, just somewhere. Like, I knew photo mode, and I'll be honest, I don't know how I figured that one out either, but maybe there's an NPC that tells you this stuff? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to get to DK Paint. I didn't know how to get to. I didn't know it was like only a main menu thing that you have to press plus while you're on the main menu. They don't really tell you some of these things.
They do eventually tell you that in the game, way too late. And then even when you're on the title screen, the button that says DK Artist is all the way up in the corner, really tiny.
You don't even see it.
Yeah, Nintendo's got some weird user interface things that they've been struggling with lately, like Echoes of Wisdom. I'm doing a re-review of that right now, and that's one of my complaints, which was a very public complaint everybody had, was the Echo menu being, like, kind of ridiculous to navigate. Nintendo's usually pretty good about UI, so I'm a little surprised that this is happening. I mean, I'm done with the game now for the most part, so like it doesn't matter anymore, but I hope this is something they pay a little bit closer attention to in the future.
Yeah, it's strange that, for as loud as some of us can be about some of these issues, that they don't change, right? And I think that's what's more frustrating about these existing in DK is that this is something Nintendo's heard from the player base for like at least 5 years now, and they still continue to do these things, right? So it's, like you said, it's the fishing bait all over again. We now have DK, a game that came out on a new console 5 years on, from people complaining about Animal Crossing feeling like it was designed in 2001 and not really being updated since then. And we still have these elements that kind of sneak their way in. When I talked about DK after I rolled credits, my initial thought was that, this is a game that is scarily close to being perfect, but it has some flaws that feel so obvious that Nintendo caught them and was just like, nah, we're gonna leave them in. And that's what baffles me the most. I would say though, all of these are super minor. Probably the most annoying thing for me was just at times it feels like the camera pulls in entirely too close to DK, especially when you're underground and you're digging to where you have no clue what's around you anymore.
I will say that just based on my own memory, it does feel like it was much better than it was at the preview event that we did in New York. Because I remember just having a heck of a time with the camera when I was underground. But in the final version of the game, it pulls out So like you see a version of the underground where you can't like see what's around you, but there's enough space that you can tell where DK kind of is in the world. It's not perfect, but it is much better than what it was.
I would say Oh, go ahead.
Given the amount of space that you're given at any given time, I think the camera works pretty well given the fact that you're just always in a lot of times inside of an enclosed space trying to maneuver around. Like there's only so much you can do considering there's collision everywhere. I think the kind of freedom that it does give you, despite the fact that it's so hard to, give you a clear field of view, given this entire game, a lot of this game is about just digging around, digging holes, digging inside. There's just a bit of forgiveness I have for it, I guess, just because I can't really expect it to solve everything with a camera issue in a 3D space like this. So I don't know.
The fact that the camera works at all is kind of a marvel in itself.
Yeah,
this game is a technical marvel, like in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I would, like I said, I want to reiterate because it's 2025 and people tend to blow things out of proportion. These are minor issues. The camera, I would say the thing that annoyed me most camera-wise in the game wasn't the closeness or the sometimes inability to see things around me, because those happened relatively infrequently. The biggest thing that kind of, again, a minor annoyance was if you maybe smashed some terrain but didn't make a hole and didn't go underground. Sometimes if you dip just a little too far below what they decided ground level is, you would see the environment start to disappear and become brown as though you were underground, but you were still completely above ground. And I think that happens pretty often in the game if you're actively smashing stuff. Like if you've created some potholes, you can occasionally create a pothole so low that the environment starts to disappear around you, and you're like, I'm still above ground. I'm just running.
I think if I were to levy like another complaint, it's not really a complaint so much as a minor disappointment. One of my favorite things about Mario Odyssey was just the wide breadth of outfits that Mario could get. I love DK's fur color dye, and I think Pauline's outfits are excellent. But man, all of his pants are the same. All of them are the same pants.
Too many bridges.
Some different pants.
So interestingly for me, one thing I love about because I'm kind of two minds on the clothing system. I love that the clothing has effects, which Odyssey didn't. It was just purely cosmetic. So that is kind of cool. I didn't actually like the hair dye, and I tried it. I was initially really psyched about it. I made DK blue like in the lagoon layer and kept it for a while, but it started to feel like I wasn't playing as DK. I was like, oh, I'm just a random Kong. And so I changed it back to like natural brown. But I agree that there isn't enough variety in the outfits. I would have liked to see him have the same level of variety that Pauline does, because she gets a ton of cool outfits. But DK kind of, it's a tie and breeches, and the ties are very inventive. The breeches not so much.
You can't see the tie most of the time though, which is a shame. And then the pants it's just the same model of pants, but with a different color. And I like them, but I just wish there was a bit more. Like Mario's outfits calling back to different eras and different games, even, like forgotten artworks from the past. I loved all of that, and I just wish DK went a little harder in that direction.
He's just not known for really wearing clothes.
It's true.
There's not much to pull from unless you get other Kongs. Like, I don't know. It'd be funny to see him in like Funky Kong's outfit with the shades and the bandana and the shirt.
Like, he doesn't have
something.
That.
Yeah, there's something to pull from, but they didn't really go ahead and go all the way.
No
I
boxing
guess they do
gloves. Like, there's things they could have done. It's like I said, it's not a complaint, just more of a disappointment.
Yeah,
because one of my favorite things about Odyssey was getting to a new level and having access to a bunch of new clothes that were callbacks to other Mario games, some brand new ones. Like, that was a fun experience for me, especially when you get to Peach's Castle at the end of the game and you see that Mario 64 outfit. My mind exploded.
Oh man,
I was waiting for that moment and it never came.
Seeing that outfit moving at 60 frames per second blew my mind. I couldn't comprehend what was going on. I guess that's kind of the one thing with Donkey Kong Bonanza is that if I compare it to Mario Odyssey, I don't mean to compare it the entire time, but it's hard not to. I think Mario Odyssey has, like, as far as for where I am in the game, this might change. But for the point that I am, there's more like grandiose, like bam in your face kind of memorable moments in Mario Odyssey, like whether you're turning into the dinosaur, whether it's Jump Up Superstar, whether you're fighting the dragon. That's just a real random freaking dragon. Donkey Kong Bonanza doesn't really have like that kind of oh my god kind of moment that as much as I've seen in Mario Odyssey. And I mean, I'm not trying to goad anyone to say spoilers or anything, but I think from the amount of time I spent with DK Bonanza now compared to Odyssey, like I've seen more like, wow, those are some very like key highlight marquee moments in this game that I'm going to remember years from now, but not so much with Donkey Kong Bonanza. Not that that's a bad thing or anything. That's just something I've noticed from this point.
I guess for me, the only moment in Odyssey that really hits that mark for me is the Jump Up Superstar moment in the game, because like that was kind of the big thing that they were hyping up before launch. You're right, DK doesn't really have stuff like that sprinkled throughout in the way that Odyssey does, but I think the moment to moment is still a bit higher for me in DK, just because that main scenario is a lot more interesting.
Yeah,
I'm with Daniel on this one in that Odyssey has these big set piece moments that for me put it over the top, right? That put it over DK. And like Daniel, I also don't want to spend this whole video comparing the two, but it is, like he said, very difficult because it's the same team and because this is really the first proper, full on game that they've made after Odyssey that's kind of in the same vein. I think DK has a lot of pluses for it, and I do think there are ways in which it is better than Odyssey. Like you mentioned, Brandon, the moment-to-moment gameplay is much more engaging because the act of exploration is much more rewarding. It seems like there's something to do around every corner and beneath every surface, which is something that Odyssey doesn't have that verticality in most places. Whereas with, but I think what you get is because Mario, for better or worse, has a much richer history than Donkey Kong does. Nintendo has spent the better part of its 40-year history with these characters putting the spotlight on Mario rather than DK. And so you have a lot more source material to draw from. And because of that, at least for me, and I think for a lot of folks, I have a much more, a much deeper emotional attachment to Mario, the character, than I do to Donkey Kong. And so when they do those fan service moments, rare as they are, they just stay in my mind. They stick with me much more powerfully than anything that I experienced in Bonanza.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Though it is funny, like considering Jump Up Superstar, the main hook is Donkey Kong.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a discussion to be had that I can't have on this video about some feelings I have around Jump Up Superstar and maybe the Bonanza equivalent thereof.
But I think we have covered pretty much everything, unless there's something else that you guys want to bring up.
What's up with Donkey Kong's fur? Why does it look like feathers? He looks feathery, not furry. I'm kind of have a problem with that. It's kind of been bothering me, but I know not everyone has that issue. Why does it look?
I do too. I actually do. He doesn't look fuzzy. He looks spiky. Like I almost, and I'm not even joking. This isn't a spoiler. I half expected him to have some kind of Bonanza that made him look like a Super Saiyan, and he didn't, and I was a little sad about that.
Technically, his Kong Bonanza does.
Kind of, but I was expecting like Super Saiyan, Meowio in 3D Land, or Bowser's Fury looked like Goku a little bit, and I was kind of hoping we'd get something much closer to Goku. But
Goku is a monkey.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Everything connects.
But those are our impressions of Donkey Kong Bonanza. Like we said, John is working on the review. I believe that will be up tomorrow as the time of this being posted. So make sure to watch out for that. I really like this game, and that seems to be the case for all of us here.
Yeah, I mean, like, we may have levied some criticisms here, but I really want to hammer home that this is the best Switch 2 game that's out right now. So it's not a bad Nintendo game. It's an excellent game. You should go play it. I strongly recommend it to anybody who has a Switch 2. And if if it interests you, it might be the game worth buying the console for, at least for right now. So it's an amazing game, and if I were to rate it, it would be above a 9. So I think that's it's way up there. It's fantastic.
The Odyssey team showing why they're the Odyssey team with this game, I think.
Yeah,
they have lived up to their name. But that's going to do it for us. Make sure to stick here to GVG for all your Nintendo Switch 2 news, reviews, and everything in between. But until next time, keep the games good and the vibes greater. Bye now.
Bye, so we meet again.